All right. So I don't know how to say this, right? Like, first, I just want to give like the disclosure. I'm not a programmer that's worked at X company for X amount of years. I've essentially been a teacher at UCF in mathematics, at Valencia at mathematics. I've worked for Microsoft and Apple, but more like the sales and hardware division, including community and technical support. Not any programming specifics, but I've always worked with code. I'm a computer science major. I've created my own PHP servers, APIs. I have my own websites. Basically, everything you see around you or in my streams have been hard coded by me. Uh, Coded by me, whatever. But even I can tell shit code when I see it. So here's my reaction. And this is kind of a OCD type of thing, because when you're coding, there's a certain set of etiquette that you go for. You don't just put numbers everywhere. It just makes me want to throw up. So let's take a look. Nuxanor has been talking about pirate software lately. And pirate software has been doing a bit of a huge, let's say, conflicting interest with the Stop Killing Games initiative, which is a consumer-based initiative. It's trying to make corporations have a backup plan for when their AAA titles or whatever titles they create as far as gaming, they have a server, they have to upkeep that server with costs, and then you grow your people, the customer base. But then at some point you get to that end, right? The end. Your expenses keep going, but there's just not any more customers left. So what they do is they just stop the game, kill the server, and that $50 you spent now doesn't work. So it's not really that you're making a purchase of these games. That's why I love indie games. Indie games are super encouraging for a lot of little developers that are watching, like Schedule One or freaking even bigger ones. Um, there's too many to list off. But indie games work on the basis of simplicity and sustainability. Many games that I can't think on the top of my head when I'm talking like this. Kletka is one of them. Lethal Company, frickin' Repo. All of them have a kind of server to server based scenario where you don't have to essentially like it's built to work between P2P. Deep Rock Galactic, perfect example. These games that let you connect to each other without having to have a central server. So it's definitely possible for these big companies to create a server so everyone can, or not even create a server, go outside of that server that's official. Like DayZ, you can have your own custom servers, right? So there's the companies can make their own servers, sure, but then they should be able to let you direct connect with your friends. That's it. It's so simple. We've done this for ages. But they don't because they want to maintain a dominance of the customer base and the data analytics and your habits and your actions and have all of that be basically your profile. This is why a lot of times when we talk about um, stop killing games or when you hear the conversation from the corporate side, they say, oh, we just can't release the servers to the regular people because it's got a lot of proprietary software in there. Well, then freaking scrape it out. It's not that hard. It takes you a week or 2 weeks with a couple of devs to scrape out the details. And maybe, sure, maybe you did fuck up and do really bad and poorly on your programming. And maybe you've been watching pirate software and that's why you suck at programming. But if you have a plan from the beginning and you modularize all your server components, and then you've got your section of modules that are based on analytics and all this other stuff, encryption methods and whatever. You will be able to easily remove those, and then the server on its own will still continue to work if you've done the correct, from the beginning to end, programming, coding. So there, and then pirate software is coming in trying to misinterpret the whole movement where it's not about the consumer having and paying for something and then ending up with a something that, you can say you paid, but 5 years later the server goes down and it's okay for the corporation to basically take the money and then turn off your product. There was a couple of games that depend on even single player games that you have to be connected to the internet. Now, if you come from the older generations of games, we had CD keys, and those had keygens, and they worked, but then they didn't, and they had their own thing going on. So I can understand why a corporation would prefer this sort of online verification of purchase. Cool. But that doesn't mean that you should make it so dependent on this purchase that when you decide that it's the upkeep of the server takes too much, that you're essentially just gonna cut the server off and everyone that paid for the game cannot use it anymore, not even in single player mode. So what I want to talk about though is because I was just watching this and I was very surprised. I was very surprised at the code that I'm seeing. Again, I'm not a developer that's worked for a large corporation, never claimed to be. I've worked for schools, educational environments, and I've worked in plenty of smaller retail technology areas, including the technical service area, fixing Macs, fixing Windows devices, etc. I can build you a computer, I can build you a server, I can troubleshoot why it's not working, and I can basically fix any computer that, unless like the whole motherboard is burnt because your fans didn't work correctly, and then I can still fix it by replacing the motherboard. But you get the idea. Programming has been more of a self-tool. I've taught myself a lot of it. I learned C++, Java, and C, the basics, back in computer science world, and I learned all the algorithms that go behind sorting and the advanced concepts behind that. But then I decided to expand myself. I learned PHP on my own. I learned JavaScript on my own. I learned Python on my own. Well, technically, I've kind of knew Bash scripting back in like my 16s, 17s, because I was huge in Ubuntu. You can see some of the old videos I have here that I used to do little scripts here and there. I had a really cool Acer computer that really was horrible with compatibility with Ubuntu. So I ended up basically creating a bash script that extracted the drivers for some sound card or something, and then plugging it in and installing it into the Ubuntu system. And my wireless was some Realtek incompatible thing. So there was a whole technical aspect to it. So I've always been kind of like that sort of techie. But when I look at this code, I really, really, it makes me sick. It makes me sick.
That is
So
why people are shitting on this man.
And 98% of the actual stream is him looking at his subscribers, looking at his tip jar as to how much money people have sent him,
Bro.
yeah,
and
though.
also looking at videos about games, but never actually doing any
So this guy's coding Jesus, and that's Nuxanor.
game development in a dev stream. Without further ado, let's actually take a look at some of his code.
This.
Alright, so I'm
Bro, this dude's a fucking janitor at Blizzard. I worked at Blizzard for 20 years, and I can tell you, this is ass. Eat my entire ass, dude.
going to be linking these VODs in the description box below. I recommend people actually download these VODs
I'm
before they
probably
take
gonna
some
do
down
that.
because
Oh,
honestly,
shit!
if I was claiming I'm a game developer with 20 years of experience, this would be
There's no way he took it down. Right, dude? There's no fucking way he took it down. I don't believe it. Okay, thank God. There's no way. There's no fucking way he took it down, bro. That's crazy.
embarrassing to have online. Let's take a look at
Wait,
what's
it's
really
actually
wrong about
that
this.
bad?
And I don't even
Yeah,
need to
it's
be a game
pretty
dev to
bad.
understand that. When you look at the code here, what do you see? You see a lot of magic numbers.
We also call this hard-coded numbers. Hard-coded means the only way you can adjust these in any way is to go back into the code and manually change these. Now, unless you're 100% sure these are like falling particles. We see falling particles. Also, I'm looking at these comments, and it really reminds me of when I'm generating vibe coding sessions in stream with an AI, with Grok. So it looks like he's almost picking up some Grok code or something. I don't know, maybe ChatGPT. That's not the important part. The important part is that there's no definition for what these values are. Now, I can kind of assume certain things. Effect, drop, fine, that's a type of maybe texture, maybe. Part type size, maybe an XY. and a Z dimension, and then potentially an alpha. But that's kind of the problem. Especially for, let's say, a falling particle, you may have different types of particles. If you're defining, and also it's not even in the function. Anyway, if you're defining a type of particle, you have plenty. You have rain particles, you have dust particles, you have uh, basically shoot a gun, the cartridge comes out, that's a particle. So having it set as a specific size is almost useless. What you would have is the ability to adjust. First, you create an object for particles, so you have a type of universal sort of object container, but also you would have variables that define these, and not only define them visually and obviously, like width, height, depth, and whatever type life, you would be very specific because variables you can modify, right? I get distracted sometimes. Variables you can modify through code and through situations. If you're dealing with size of cartridge, specific particle, size of dust, a different particle size, size of rain, you're able to, or width of rain, height of rain, whatever, you're able to essentially readjust those variables, but you cannot change one and one. This is forever hard coded. And when you compile your program, you're stuck with that value. So it's horrible practice to ever hard code anything into any of these. Unless you're absolutely sure, then if you're going to make some other particle, then you're basically going to copy all this stuff over to another location, which is another set of horrible coding, because now you have a set of defined spaces or blocks of code that you can reuse throughout your whole program instead of copying and pasting it for dust, for rain, for cartridges, for uh whatever, everything that's a particle, right? Explosion particles, walls falling apart, whatever. So horrible, horrible, horrible effect drop. Okay, part type create. Okay, so effect drop, effect drop. It's so generic. Yeah,
It's an
okay, anyway.
industry term for numbers
Effect
that don't
hit.
have any description or explanation as to what they are or why they exist. And you
Yeah.
also have a lot of true or false, which is not descriptive at all. When you look at any
Okay.
function call as another developer, you should understand what's going on without needing to read through the implementation of the actual method itself. So, part type sprite, part type size, I don't need to read through that to understand what's being passed to it and what it's doing. But that's not what's going on here. I should need to ask myself, what is this number one? What is the zero? What does it
Bro.
signify? Right?
There is no shot. There is no shot that one is supposed to be representative of like a character in the game. And every single time they're going to want that character to do something, they're going to need to put one in to reference that same character.
No, that's not it. It's the size, and normally any sort of size, especially if it's 3D game, you have width, height. Maybe it's a 2D because we don't have a Z dimension, so maybe it's a width and a height on. But then, why you're making a square basically? What are you making here? So one and one is going to be a square. Zero, there's no depth, and I couldn't tell you what the last one is, but potentially whether it's uh if it's a particle, it probably has collision, so maybe it's a true or false based on a collision, true or false. So that's maybe. But again, you can't tell these things out of nothing. You would have to go into the actual documentation to read about what it is. But this is the type of code you're gonna get if you ask Grok a very generic question. Create for me a set of particles and define all the details of these particles through C++ for Unity, right? And potentially it'll give you something like this because you haven't described your particle. You haven't said whether it's a raindrop, a gun bullet, or a gun cartridge, or dust, or whatever, snow. You haven't described it, and it does, which makes it even worse because when you're actually prompting, you do have to be specific about what you're expecting Grok to do. The less descriptive you are, means that the more generic your code or the response is going to be, which also goes back down to the user. If he's not very descriptive, does he actually know what he's talking about? He just heard particle somewhere and decided, oh, Grok can make me a particle. Okay, make me a particle, Grok. And then there you go in C++. But there's no definition to what these mean. So again, variables are important. They are tedious. Absolutely tedious. But the reason we use variables is so we don't have to copy and paste code and reuse these things over and over. right? You would have to create a new particle by copying these lines and all of everything from 15 to 23 all the way down to 26 and 30 into a whole different file. What is he making? Frost door keypad 2? Object frost doors keypad 2 create. A keypad? What are you creating? A frost door keypad? That's confusing. With particles, buttons? Are you making buttons? A spark hit? Are you making a button that has a, a illumination behind it when you hit it? I don't know. That's the problem, right? So if you create a specific nice, generic, but useful, this is why we use objects, right? Every single object goes down to a very basic component. You take a lamp, you've got a shape, you've got a function, and you've got a color and a descriptor. So you take that down, you can create a descriptor, a object for everything. A lamp, a TV, a keyboard, a wall, whatever, microphone. Where is that? Over here. All of these have those components, right? And then you can then inherit that to a next step and then be more descriptive about those. Is it use electricity? Does it not? Is it organic? Is it not? And then you keep going in this way because now you don't have to recreate the wheel every single time. So in this case, he's not using what seems to be objects, just functions that are used to create some sort of particle, but he's not even using variables to be able to dynamically change it based on maybe if he's deciding to create a large or a small particle, a life size, a type of, okay, the part type life, the alpha, okay, there's the actual transparency, gravity effect, fine, direction of movement, which is the vector, the speed, which is the magnitude, orientation, right, 0, 0, 0, true. Like a bullet or a bullet's orientation would have to be specific to the direction it's moving. Otherwise, if you have a sideways bullet, it looks weird. It doesn't look realistic. So that's the issue, right? Anyway,
There is no way. There is no way that's how he did it the entire code. I did a little coding of in Java, like JavaScript, a long time ago.
which we do on stream. I teach everyone how to basically start off, play around with some code, um, make some games too. And I do a lot of vibe coding with Grok. So I'm again not gonna be like, oh, I'm a game developer, here's some code. I just teach you how you can start doing code even if you're not very familiar with coding and programming, which makes you more enticed by it and you get to do it more. Now, the big caveat is actually look at the code and learn how it works. And that's what we go through a lot of our analysis of how Grok codes. So like and subscribe for all that kind of stuff. But in the end, don't be like Pirate Software Thor guy. He just generically makes a bunch of Grok prompts with no definition. At least that's what it seems like.
So I am super fucking rusty at all of this. But even I know that that's crazy. That is crazy.
Imagine we have a car object, and I create the car object by passing in 96 4 false false. Do you have any idea about what those numbers mean? How am I
No,
initializing that car? You
no,
don't. A
no.
step above that, a better alternative would be to specify in words what 96 means. For example,
Yeah,
unsigned 32-bit integer horsepower equals 96.
exactly.
Number of doors equals 4. Is
Okay.
automatic equals false. Is
Exactly.
electric equals false. And
Yeah.
then pass that into the construction of car. That is the bare minimum. That's what I would expect out of an intern
Right.
that's fresh out of school.
Because
Yeah, that is fresh
one
out
of
of
the most
school.
important things about coding is not just about getting it to operate the way you want it to. It's also writing it in an efficient way. Like if this does, there's no way this dude needs to rewrite all of these things for part types every single time. He
That's what
can
I
copy
mean.
this entire.
See, even Nux knows a little bit about it. He was not even boasting it. He had it at some point in his life. But that's exactly it. You would have to recreate all of these for every single type of particle you could possibly think of. You want to make code recreatable. If you're ever coding as a programmer and you find that you're reusing or doing the same steps over and over and over, like you can literally go through your code and highlight some functions in whatever order you're going, you can take that code and put it in a function and basically call that function and then input some changeable variables to adapt to where you need that code to be. So being able to use clean, organized, and reusable code is very, very important.
Entire paragraph.
And good for you, because when you go back to actually modify it, you're not stuck. You use keywords. You can look up those keywords with the control F, and then even change the variable names if you want to adjust things. So if you code and name things appropriately instead of having numbers, you would have to go through all of these little numbers and change it every single time. That's a headache, man. This is why it makes me want to throw up when I see it.
Every single time.
Taking that a step further, you can implement a concept called strong typing, which is the most expressive form of instantiation. What we can do in that case is define an alias at the bare minimum or a class, and we can call it horsepower.
Okay.
And then we
Yeah.
can create an enumeration for things like transmission or fuel. And then we'd alter the card's constructor and pass in that information.
Constructors are a part of objects. Those are the initial initiators. When we create a new card, there are certain features. A constructor always runs first, creates the features, and then you're able to use those functions and or methods and attributes within based on the constructor's setup.
Horsepower 98, door number 4, transmission automatic, fuel gasoline. You don't need to be a game developer to know that that's a lot more maintainable
Yeah.
Yeah.
than whatever Thor has here. Another really good example of that is at
All right.
2556. So if we jump there, okay, right here. Alarm 0, alarm 1, alarm
Bro,
2.
there's no fucking
What
way.
is-
dude.
what are those
Oh my
alarms?
lord.
Is it an alarm for person A, an alarm for whatever character, an
Yeah.
alarm to do what? It's unexpressive.
It's so jumbled.
really spaghetti code in my
Oh
opinion.
my god.
There's no
dude.
definitions.
Let's go
Oh,
to around
Lord!
1 hour and
Oh.
4 minutes. This is also a complete mess for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
First of all, Thor is using the incorrect data types. This
Wait,
isn't even
what?
getting to some sort of advanced design or design pattern. It's showing a complete lack of understanding how to represent information in a program. Okay? What do I mean by that? Well, look at question asked equals 0. Question asked, in my opinion, is true or false. Has
Yeah.
this question been asked? It should
That's
be a
fair.
Boolean data type. What does 0 mean?
Bro.
Booleans are represented as integers under the hood. So in C++, anything that isn't 0 is true. So 1 is true. But why would you even give another developer the option to write question asked equals 42? In theory, that should be true because
That's actually fair. That's actually it's not going to be true technically because it's forcing the equal of 1, so 42 would still not work here. But in a general sense, like when you're in JavaScript, there's a little bit more loose typing. When you do zeros and ones are very acceptable in the scripting environment. When you're in scripting a high level on top of another system like Chrome uh, or Python, you're a lot more lenient with variables. You don't have to define integers, strings, doubles, booleans. You kind of just use a variable and then let it flow. In C++, though, you are very much strict to those particular pieces, aka you want to make sure every single variable is well defined because it can also lead to error. It could lead to issues and conflict in your code and depending on certain cases, especially with C++, you have memory allocation, actual functions that go into RAM and take space in that RAM card to save files for future use. So if you're not very posed and well effective with your use, and especially like if you know a number is going to be a certain size, integers are one of the smaller ones. You've got floats that go to a bigger size, so you have all kinds of these sort of size constrained values in these types and these variable types. That's the specifics, and it takes a lot of extra effort. Doesn't mean you can't use always really big just in case your values get large, but you'd be wasting extra space. So there's an efficiency level of making sure your types and your variables are used in an effective manner.
anything other than 0 is true. But why
I would
even
use true and
allow
false here.
somebody to write code that can potentially be that confusing?
Brother.
It's just a no-go. Another thing here that I noticed,
Yeah, I wonder who even wrote this code, to be honest. I wonder who wrote this code. Like, I feel like this is literally something he must have pulled out of, like, some sort of AI or some shit. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand. Like, because this is not something you could share with the team.
Oh, this is the part.
right? Because people have to always know what 1 is and what 0 is at any time. It's not like it's a true or false.
is the absurd amount of comments. Most of the time, you don't need to write comments in your code.
Yeah.
That's because your code should be
Yeah, you should be able to understand from the code what's going on.
True. The variables that you use will be the definition. In fact, when you're used to coding for a while, you make sure the specific variables you use are consistent, and all you got to do is search and find Control F for the variables you would normally use for something. Here, of course, there's no definitions that we see, but there's a lot of numbers, so we have a lot of comments. Maybe you'll say at the top, this section is for dialogue options in a question. And that's it. You don't need to have, we have asked the question. Which question did we ask? You don't need those extra pieces. In fact, you would have a better chance of reading the code if you name things correctly, but you don't need so many
Like these two
comments.
lines,
But they're still good. Comments are still good. I want to make that sure to be known because it helps you still go to a specific line in your code when you're got like a two, three, four, 500 lines of code on one page. Comments are good, but also so is white space. Nice, clean white space.
dialogue option is a question. We have asked the question. Which question did we ask? Like this line explains what this code is, and then the next line explains what the next bit of code is. Like, why the fuck should you need comments to explain every single individual line of code?
Of documenting, but there is a 1 to 5% case rate in which you should be writing comments only.
Yeah. Code pride flag. We must grift a little bit more. Remember to code optional pronouns.
If your code is extremely complex, and that's
Yeah.
not the case here. This is a
Yeah,
simple
no.
if statement and a simple switch statement. You don't need to add comments here. Having a comment for we have asked the question and
Yikes. Comment, we have asked the question, and it's question asked equals 1. No fucking shit, question asked means we asked the question. Oh!
Okay, let me elaborate. This is actually a good practice. It's called a bounce. When you do activate certain actions in a game, you want to keep a specific variable that makes sure that you have tracked that the action has occurred. Because otherwise, a loop specifically will go around and keep activating the action or the question. So when we say question asked equals 1, I'm personally assuming this bounce is going to make sure that that question doesn't get asked again. It makes sense. This one makes sense.
Bye-bye.
But you should still put it as true.
Yeah, dude, that's crazy. Like, dude, that's humiliating. Okay, you want to know my conspiracy theory? My conspiracy theory is he didn't write any of this code. He's a rich streamer. My guess is someone else wrote the code, either ChatGPT or a human. You got someone else to write the code, and he just kind of sits there. And you know why they had to add these comments? Because he didn't know what the fuck he's reading. I don't know. That's my conspiracy theory. I don't know, man. But this is crazy. Question asked, comment. He asked the question.
and question asks equals 1 is totally superfluous, a waste of time, a waste of space.
Bro, actual intern LARPing as a coder.
Again, it's a bounce. It's not being treated as a bounce, but many times when I do like Roblox programming, if there's a certain case for a block that hurts, maybe like a lava block, you probably don't want it to be an infinite, real quick loop. Maybe you want it to be timed. 5 damage every second, 5 damage every 2 or 5 seconds. So you would put a bounce because the computer thinks super fast. So if you just gave it the ability, it's gonna kill you instantly, even though you don't have a type of waiting process. So you put a bounce, question asked, we got hurt. Got hurt, true. Okay, got hurt, true, wait timer. Timer goes away, 5 seconds. Now got hurt equals false. And then you go back and get hurt again. So there is a use case for it. And in this case, again, I'm assuming it's just for making sure the question doesn't just go in loops forever or, go too quick. Like ask the same question over and over.
I'm not sure why it was added. If not just to waste time on a dev stream, to spend more time pretending you're coding than watching videos.
I'm just out of curiosity. There's no fucking way this is gonna work. I have to know. I have to know,
Oh
bro.
yeah, this is where he goes
I
to
have to know what I would actually do if
ChatGPT or
this is
Grok
the case.
actually, yeah.
Give me code
What's up, bub?
for asking a question in a video game and a response in C++. Brother. All right. This is crazy. And again, look how it gives you comments for every single line. Look at this.
That's
shit.
true.
Oh my
That's it.
God, look at this.
It does.
Gives you the comments. Simulate displaying the question.
It really
Wait for the
does.
Response. Process display response. Oh my God, dude! I think he got his code off ChatGPT. I think he got his code off AI, bro. It does the same crap of giving you this comment before. Look.
And it's consistent with the capital letters like you're not gonna properly grammar your code every single time. Like even me, I'm just gonna say really quick what this is about, what really quick this is about. Maybe if I have multiple places that I can go back to, I'll probably put situation one, situation two, situation three, but I'm not gonna go into detail and put like almost like a proper sentence. This is just kind of like when we text people. Like we text in sometimes very short ways because it's a fucking comment. Like it's not that important. As long as you can read it, it's good. But Grok does a really good job of making sure grammar is correct. So when I'm looking at the code between Pirate Software and what Grok does,
Look at how
absolutely,
he wrote his comments.
absolutely look
Start
at that.
conversation. If dialogue is a question, we have asked a question. They all also have. Okay, so if you look at most coding, for example, you'll notice that the actual code, there's no capital letters. The capital letters are in the comments because this is a sentence, right? It's a sentence that you're writing.
Now he's
So if you're
describing what a
writing a
comment
sentence
is.
to describe things, it has a capital letters, right? However, the actual code has no caps. Why would you put capital letters in the comments unless ChatGPT puts capital letters on every comment?
That's
Oh my
insane.
god,
That
dude,
is
this is
actually the biggest thing
brutal.
I can see here.
Attention. I don't know, man. I wonder.
That he is Pirate
Don't know. Look, I'm not a
Software.
coder. I'm not gonna make believe I actually know what I'm talking about here. I'm just saying.
I mean, again, we're not going to be properly grammatic when we're doing simple comments to describe a piece of detail. It just makes no sense. It's an extra piece of time that there's no need for. So I actually agree. This is one of the biggest kind of red flags that I think Pirate Software's code is not real code. And I think it's just Grok and he just talks about nothing the whole
Bro,
stream.
I'm just saying. This definitely looks like it came out of some AI.
Okay, let's take a look at his second stream because the rest of this stream is reviewing other games, looking at his subscription count. I don't know why he gets so horny looking at this.
Wait,
Oh,
he
that's so
actually just
sad.
sits there looking at his subscription count on his streams? Look, I said he was an egotistical asshole, but like, like, what are you doing, my guy?
I don't know why he gets so horny looking at this. Watching video games, etc.
Alright.
You guys get the point.
Yeah.
That's it.
Storyline array number. Oh my god.
Bro, who is in this scene? Shelly.
Here he appears to be storing a timeline of events in a flat one-dimensional array with random numbers as the indices in order to represent said event. So literally anything would be an upgrade over what is written here. For example, what he could have done is created a nested structure where all those default values, instead of being hard-coded and written in some file, can simply be stored in a YAML or configuration file that could be edited outside of the build as to not waste time rebuilding the entire application in a YAML.
This is actually true. I have had a student that we created a little text-based adventure game, and you create the logic in JavaScript, but in order to kind of make your game expandable, we use JSON. JSON is a little storage on the side, and then all he would have to do is create the logic for, make a choice, do this, do that, and the JSON file will activate that choice and response based on the information of level one, scene one, and so on and so forth. And then you would import that, or you can modify the JSON file, and you would never have to touch the JavaScript itself because the logic is there and it's just pulling the storyline from a JSON file. And all you have to do is just create your story now from the JSON file. That's actually a stream I want to do in the future, creating a little text-based adventure game. It sounds pretty fun. This is a little project I had with a past student. So again, like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you're new, I do a lot of programming, a lot of mathematics, and sometimes I see weird shit on the internet, and I just want to share my perspective. So welcome in for anyone watching.
YAML or XML format. That's development 101. You learn it in the first week of your new job.
All right.
And YAML would be the same sort of file storage. It's it's for settings and setups and data, right? Some sort of organization on the side that you don't have to necessarily bulk up your code for. JSON is another, XML is another. All of these are just types of side storages that you would use to basically have a sequence of events, for instance, happen, or a manifest for a specific rule set of an application to work in a specific way, and settings files. When you have like a game, let's say you're doing back in the day StarCraft 2 or StarCraft 1, I remember I was able to go into the configuration files, which I think was a XML file, and just change the IP address of the server straight in the XML file, and then that would affect the game. So there's certain things you don't have to necessarily hard code into your code. The logic for sure, but you know, It depends on the developer.
Either an intern or a junior developer. What's
Okay.
even worse is he now also needs to remember what 419 means.
Each one
Yeah.
of these numbers is representative representing something else. It's such like, dude, spaghetti code is a good way to put it. But listen, that is what you do, man. It's you imagine having a code index with 419 different things. And every time you want to get one of those things to happen, you need to go back to your index to see what 419
You
is
have like
to
a
put it in
whole
here.
huge
Every
notepad.
single time.
One, two,
So
three,
somewhere in his code, he
310,
needs to actually
69,
add a
420.
comment or something to represent what a 419 is. As you can see here, I found the
Oh
file
my
that
god.
contains all these events, which are the association between a magic number and some
Bro, look at this. This is the array, man. 220, coffee joke. 221, stress guy.
state. It's very obvious that this
Jesus.
can get very unwieldy extremely quickly. As you can see here, he has some number associated with 0, 1, or even 2, and then he needs to detail in a comment what that means. Now, imagine a developer accidentally puts 2 here or 3. Finding, tracking, and solving that bug is
That
really
is
going to
so
be a
gross.
development nightmare. What if you forget to type 3 here and it accidentally type 2? And start associating coffee cold knowledge with floor 2 coffee age. Or even worse, in your code somewhere, instead of typing 213, you type 214, and now need to go back and track why your game is misbehaving. This
Yeah,
is
this would be a bugging nightmare. It really for sure would be a bugging nightmare. Like,
Oh, Chris, good one. Where were all of these code critiques back in 2003? I've learned more about video game programming from the critiques of software than I did from tutorials. Uh, Fair. I got basics on screen. I gave up. No, don't give up on programming, even if it is for like something simple. I mean, maybe programming a game, you'll need a lot of people on hands, unless you're doing something simple. But in the end, yeah, if you're going to create a more intricate system, you need a lot of organization. And then if you have more than one dev on hands, I don't know, honestly, how Schedule One dev did it. But then again, you look at the game, it's so simplistic and the shapes and the graphics are pretty straightforward and you can manage all of that in like Unity or Unreal or whatever. But back then we didn't have those huge environments, Unreal and Unity, or right now Godot. Right? You can manage the whole system within it. So you're able to essentially be an indie dev pretty easily. You don't have to go crazy with the graphics. You don't have to compare yourself to like Assassin's Creed Shadows. I don't want to talk about that. But at least for the case of programming, the future is programming. Whether it's game development or you're going to be one of the people that knows how to program an AI in the future, because we're all approaching the world of AI dominated everything, which is horrid. But learn it, keep it, don't let it be discouraging for you. And I recommend you maintain your programming um, enthusiasm because in the end I've done it in some random places I've never even realized I could do programming. Like for instance, I had a friend of mine who does bookkeeping for a person that sells video games and crap online. He just goes on eBay, he makes a bunch of, he buys something cheap from somewhere and then resells it on eBay, and he had like 50,000 products, and he wanted me to basically separate these one giant Excel file into 2,000 each file. This was because for whatever reason, what the hell was that application? Some tax filing application online, TurboTax, I think it was. It only accepted files up to 2,000 products, and he had 50,000 products. And I was supposed to manually go in, copy and paste, and basically take all that time to do it. So what I do, I was like, wait a minute. I've played with Excel and Python, so I kind of learned to make a really quick script to count to 2,000 in Python and then copy and separate this giant file that would have took me like a week or 2 weeks to do by hand. And I let it run for like 5 minutes after I coded it. The coding went for about an hour or two. But once I did that, it just split the whole thing into 50 pieces, was it? 2000, like 25 files. And I was like, holy crap, I just saved like 2 weeks of time just to get this file split into pieces. Then I gave it to him. He was able to upload it and etc. Right? Little random bits and pieces where programming makes life super simple and saves you time. So it's good to keep going. You never know when to expect it, but something in your life could use a program to make it efficient. You just have to really, you have to expand in that programming knowledge, and then when it pops up, you'd be like, hey, I can code this process. It'll make life easier.
Because there are very often I know a lot of coders,
But good point.
but there are coders that find bugs and stuff. You have to basically go through the code and find the bug. But that, you know what that would mean? That would mean going through the code and being like, okay, this says 214. Let's go to the index. 214 is this? Okay, that's good. All right,
Oh,
this
I don't
number says
like it.
647.
This
Okay,
is so
let's go back to the
gross.
fucking back to the index to see what 647 is. And
That's a
you would
nightmare.
literally go through if there's ever a bug, which there will always
I'm
be. Every
exhausted
code has
looking at
bugs.
this code.
Okay, every single code has bugs. But so imagine needing to go through that shit. Every single time there's a mistake in the game, you need to look at what all the numbers are referencing to make sure that the coder didn't accidentally type 214 instead of 213.
Is extremely
Agreed.
poor practice
It's a headache.
and can get very messy very
Holy
quickly.
crap.
Not only that, but this is going to significantly decrease the velocity of your development because you
Mm-hmm.
won't need to jump between the storyline vars file, find the event you want to reference somewhere else in code, and go back to that line that you like to reference the event in. So you're going to constantly need to be jumping between files, forgetting, potentially mistyping, and it's
I'm
just
just so confused at the naming of this gym. Talked at bench press. Yes, no. Void. Told the truth. 1012. Why couldn't you keep these in particular individual sets? Events, objects, environment, pool, locations, cafe. Why couldn't you like create your own individual pieces and maybe a 3D array where you have the array of events, then the first location is going to be your locations, the second is, and you can use a dictionary to define things, particularly with words, so it makes sense. Why would you do a linear array of events and then are they all related? Is this just based on the storyline? Do you go from the pool to the floor two, back to the pool, and then to the gym, and then void? And then to the closet? Like, what the fuck is
just a
this?
recipe for disaster.
Holy
When it comes to
crap.
the nested structure, though, tell me what you think is better.
All right.
What Thor has here or what I have on screen? Because in
Yes.
my
Yes. That's it. That's right there. Shop cashier is angry false was spoken to false. Counter has money false. Cashier in the shop, counter has money in the shop. Yes, absolutely. You define the location, you define the details inside of the location, whether it's a cashier, whether it's the door, whether it's the customers inside. This is a perfect way to create detailed, manageable systems. What the fuck is Thor
pages
doing?
more expressive. Now, this goes beyond simply
Did he go to college? This Thor guy? Like I didn't hear about Pirate Software until recently, until the whole, stop killing games. Then he was trying to fight for the other side because he thought it was better to keep corporations. Yo, cat, what the hell, bro?
liking code better.
Never mind.
What I have on
I
screen
lost
is
my thought.
objectively better because it makes it
Damn.
harder for you and others to make mistakes, and it's a lot clearer as to what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't even need to know how this game is designed to understand that whatever he's doing here is not optimal. I also don't need to recommend the most optimal data structure because literally anything would be better than this. Another thing that's really
Yeah,
weird is that
I
he's
agree.
using these numbers to represent people.
I told you his numbers were representing characters. Oh my god.
Is he
Did I
really?
not say that like 10 minutes ago? Oh my lord.
Shelly
He
is
has been
number
using every
one?
number represents another character the whole way
Oh
through. Yes,
no,
he keeps
Shelly, I'm
changing the
so
exact number of
sorry.
characters.
This is how a corpo thinks. We're all numbers in the system. They don't want to give us names. They don't even want to give their own characters names. They give everything numbers. What the fuck? That's such a horrible idea. No wonder he wants Stop Killing Games to fall apart. This guy's a fucking corporate shill. I think his dad works for Blizzard, right? And he's pretending to be a developer. This makes so much sense now.
Number forever.
And now everywhere he writes the number one, and when it represents a
Oh
person, he needs to remember that it's Shelly.
Oh my god, dude.
That's how I
Presumably the same
feel.
character.
Yeah, presumably.
What is
Lastly,
this?
removing all these comments
Oh my god,
with you
don't.
as a
If you remove the comments, it's indecipherable.
Guys, like and subscribe if you want to learn the basics in programming. If you're a Thor fan, leave right away. This is horrible. This is horrible. Again, I'm not a developer, but I know at least best practices. And he's doing basically what a high schooler is doing. He's doing high school programming. He's doing actual high school programming that hasn't used enough time to understand how variables are important, and he's a developer.
My brother. Oh my god, can you imagine having a game with 200
Oh
characters and they're all
God.
represented by a number?
Newly added game developer to his game project have any idea that one is Shelly?
Bro, they'd be
You would have
annihilated.
no idea.
No
This would
clue.
You need like a little notepad. Put one is Shelly, two is Bob, three is Sandy. One meets two, two meets three, three kills one. Uh, what the
never
actual?
ever be allowed in a production repository. And
No,
like I'm
no.
Oh
hinting, it's
god.
below.
See, that's
I wouldn't want him touching my GitHub account, even taking any of like branching off into his own. He would fuck everything up.
why I said that I don't believe that either he wrote it or that he has a team. Like this is crazy. How can you hire people? You imagine hiring a dev to help work on your game and he opens this up and he's like, "What's character 472?"
What you'd expect of a
Oh
bottom
my
tier
God.
intern. One way to improve
Oh
this
no.
is to write case and then switch on an enumeration. So case character Shelly.
Right.
That is way, way better to whatever he has.
I still don't like cases. I know some people use case switch or switch case one, case two, case three. I think cases are very limiting. But then again, it's kind of just like another case for like a switch or sorry, a if statement. I'm more of an if else if because sometimes I can break them apart really quickly if I can consider certain if situations can also work with other if situations. But I feel like a switch case can sometimes not be so great. I don't know. Again, I'm not a super developer over here, but I prefer if statements.
Here. Another example is at 159. More magic numbers, 32. What does message 32
Oh my god, dude, that's crazy.
mean? What does message 65 mean?
What
What
is
does
that
message
even?
97 mean? And what are these
Stop.
dialogue options 2, 5, 6, 0? This is a
This is crazy. It's
Make it
not just one
stop.
index either. It's index on top of index on top of index. Like,
Yeah.
dude, we don't know what 32 is, but when you're
Nope.
having a conversation, the options for the responses are
2,
2,
5,
5,
6,
6,
0,
or
0.
0. All right. So like they have one index for like the characters. They have another index for dialogue options.
culmination of my past couple of comments
That's
of
absolutely
one screaming
disgusting.
pile of. Surprisingly, that is all the code that I can find in these game developer streams.
And that's all the code he shows because he only did 2 streams, even though he's a game developer. So in my opinion, it's such an obvious LARP. Now apparently, Pirate Software called him out. He called him a grifter. I think
Ah,
I showed part of that video already.
of
Right,
course
it's
he
over
would.
here.
Responds the code. There's even. Is this gonna help you? You mean the guy who's never used Game Maker Studio, doesn't know Game Maker language, and talked a lot of shit but was wrong? It's just
Okay, the guy's just wrong. All right, I'm not gonna address.
See, if you want to make an actual like statement, go into the details. This guy literally went through your code and showed how crap it is. It made me want to make this video, but you're just gonna talk trash and then turn away and pretend it's nothing. Everything I saw that he said was absolutely legitimate shit code. Like high schooler level code. Like you haven't graduated into any computer engineering or computer science level to be intricate enough with your naming conventions. But yeah, okay. He's never used Game Maker. He's whatever,
Any
grifter.
of his points, but he's wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a complete fraud. He's wrong. He's a grifter.
another
Define
person
Shelly
trying to
one.
fight for relevance.
Wait, what if there's like multiple Shellys? What do you do there? Do you like have like Shelly 2 or 3 or like how would you make all Shellys evens or odds? Or then you would have to have a couple of numbers down the line so all the Shellys are like in the hundreds, 101, 102, 103. My God. I think it might. I mean, you're already seeing drama coming from like the what was it? Ethan, Klein, Hassan, and all them, they had their little creator clash thing. That's getting canceled because that drama. And now we got this drama coming in. I think these sort of things tend to escalate, but the people that are really at fault, once you get to observe them, and then you have, you know, Hassan get picked on by lawyers, and this guy get picked on by programmers, and people that actually understand the concepts behind what they're doing, things start to fall apart a little bit. So yeah, it's probably gonna get canceled, but I don't know, maybe the game jam is gonna have a little bit more oomph, a little bit more back end to it. We'll see. Not sure.
More YouTube grifters fighting for relevance. They're all wrong and grifters. I am infinitely dude. I'm not even a coder, and I recognized your shit's ass.
True.
You can eat my entire ass. Oh my god, average furry.
No, for real, like Nux, he said he just had a little bit of coding at some point, but he realized the exact same issues that happen with this. So how much of a coder is he if even Nux can realize, hey, why are you using all these numbers? Why aren't you using variables that are changeable, definable, adjustable? You're hard coding everything. And Nux is not even a developer, and he's like, this looks like garbage. I think if someone that doesn't know how to code looks at your code and says it's shit, it's probably shit. Because if you coded correctly, you could make something not make, or something that normally would not make sense and make sense just by the definitions and words. Like that's kind of the definition for good and bad teachers. Yeah, you can have a teacher that explains something and then moves on, but if you can teach the lowest denominator within that class, you're a good teacher. But if you can just do a PowerPoint with a little, you know, stick or whatever, you're not a teacher, you're just a lecturer. So there's a difference.
Experience or something. All right. So anyway, I want to see Code Jesus' response.
What is up, guys? Coding Jesus here. Guys, in today's video, I want to review the top contentions that not only Pirate Software had, but a lot of his fanboys had with my video yesterday.
Bro, of
Uh-oh.
course they brigaded this man. How big is
Why
this
am I
channel?
why am I going into this drama? But it is programming. So honestly, maybe I can give some insight. I don't know. I'm just I hate drama. I haven't had drama since high school. I guess I'm glad to be a spectator. How about that?
160K. I'll of course be linking him in the description, obviously. But yeah, no, this is crazy. Oh my lord. Oh my lord. It keeps happening. How does it keep happening, bro? How does this keep happening?
In which I reviewed the code that he wrote for his game Heartbound.
And he
Now,
did a good
while
job.
the video was a stunning success in terms of engagement, there was a couple of themes that kept repeating from detractors that I think are worth addressing in a separate video. So let's get into it.
All right.
The first claim that I saw time and time again is that your code quality shouldn't matter if you're a solo game dev, and that
Oh my god! Wait, does he actually show the clip of Pirate Software losing his mind, or does he not even show that clip? And I have to find that myself. Hold on, I have to find that myself. Hold on.
No,
I
okay.
have to see
Like
the actual Pirate Software crash out.
while he's searching for that, you're making your life easier as a developer to actually organize yourself. That's it. That's all you're doing. You're not going to make the code. Yeah, you can, anyone, and this is what I tell my math students, anyone will solve a problem and get to the last part of that answer. And then you can circle a little letter and be happy you got it right. The problem is because every single student will approach a problem in different ways, there's always that one student that's going to finish that problem real quick and then finish the test real quick. Like you have 60 minutes, there's one student that's going to do it in 15 minutes and then go home. And everyone else is looking around like, what happened? That student knows the most effective way to do something, and he doesn't waste any time doing extra math. You know what I mean? And when I say mathematicians are lazy in any of my math streams, we are absolutely lazy. When you take 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, we don't want to keep writing that, so we put 4 times 3. Addition is just, or multiplication is a shortcut to writing the same number over and over again. The same thing with exponents. 4 times 4 times 4 is just 4 to the third power. We're so lazy we have it in the way we write math. And it's not a bad thing to be lazy and to think smart and not do extra work. And when you're doing this type of coding that Pirate Software is doing, he's essentially creating extra work for himself. He's wasting time. He's got a very unorganized method. It might work for him. That's fine. But you know what? That's probably why it takes him so long to code something because it's unorganized. And when he has to change something or adjust anything, he takes a lot more time just to get that done than to actually effectively change one variable and everything adjusts. That's all I'm saying. So you can do the math problem however you like. I like to teach my students to finish in that 15-minute period and not have to struggle for a whole hour on that test. Same with programming. I will teach a student how to make his life easier and not have headaches by teaching him proper ways to basically organize himself. Because organization makes things nice. But you know what? Yeah, you code how you want to code. Not a problem. Hold on.
Where crash out. Pirate Software coding Jesus.
Should look at my comment underneath this video.
Bro, I didn't even see his comment. It's gone. Oh, no. It's gone! Wait, I can't even find his comment. It must have been downvoted to oblivion. All right, that didn't work.
Imagine screaming and shitting about alarms and Game Maker saying, why aren't these renamed when you...
Well, yeah,
can't
depth is
rename
gonna
them?
kill
Why
something
would
real
they
quick,
do
ain't
that?
it?
It's just another, like, YouTube grifter trying to fight for relevance, dude. That's
Yeah.
all that shit is.
Of course.
Look, you can't call somebody a YouTube grifter when you're staring at your own subscription numbers. You really can't. When you're on stream and you're just staring at your own subs, like, I don't do it often. I don't say like and subscribe very often because you know what? If you like the content, you're gonna do it. I'll say it once in a while. I won't even like tell you where you can find me and learn online. Once in a while, I'll put a little thing, hey, find me here. But when it comes to individuals that will stare at their own numbers and stream, that's very grifty. That's very self-centered. That's very, you're in it for something else. And especially when your code looks like spaghetti and all you're doing is providing shit talk. That's it.
All too common these days. Think you saw that one?
That's
Very
it.
strange. Yeah, it's nuts, dude. You could still use alarms by for loop instead of manually setting all to 0 with 8 lines. Those were set to 0 because it was ending the alarms. By setting them to 0, you're actually setting the alarm to off. You would know that.
Wow.
Use Game Maker. And that wasn't all of the alarms.
Unbelievable.
Wow. You're saying
Bingo.
false is
There's no
off?
reason to set that to a for loop. Can't see your comment? Did he delete it? That'd be even funnier.
I doubt it. It's probably downvoted.
He deleted the comment? That would be even funnier.
There's no way.
No,
he
it's still
deleted
there.
the comment. Oh, it's still there. He confirmed
Yeah, I
it.
wrote this underneath this video. I said, it's clear you've never used GameMaker before based on your comments. Here's a quick rundown for you. Sprite Spark is not a magic number. It's a direct reference to an asset file called Sprite Spark. This is how GameMaker allows you to link sprites and other assets. When you want to use a sprite, sound, or other object, you call it by name. The functions you called out are part type.
Brother, he left an upvote on his comment, and he downvoted every other comment in the entire comment section.
Hold on, let me read this. The function you called out on the part type. Oh god, this is so blur. I really want to know what it says. Am I in the highest quality right here? Oh, it's still not that good. Directly referencing different aspects of this particle effect. These cannot be modified, but they can be wrapped. But this wouldn't be efficient. Having them exposed as normal allows you to modify existing particles dynamically. Changing this just creates layers of obfuscation without improving usability and performance. Alarms are immutable, internal to individual objects, and only reference the same object they are inside of. Okay, so if you are coding in an object, potentially it makes sense. So your alarm would be referencing the object that you're currently working with. But I didn't see any object-orientated structure in that. I mean, I didn't see the whole code, I guess, so I couldn't tell. Data types are not defined in GameMaker. We cannot define a Boolean. You can use 0, 1, or true, false. Yeah, at will. Well, then use true, false. None of this matters in this language. It does matter because if you put in a variable that's 2 or 4, if you give the ability for a program to use numbers, then expect something to happen where now all of a sudden your true is 2 and your false is -5. Something may happen. So if you keep it true and false, safe bet. Safe bet everything will be fine. But if you do 1 and 0, yes, they do mean true and false. But you also provide a much wider range of issues that can happen because it's not just 1 and 0 in the number system, is it? So as a safe bet, true and false are good enough.
There is no way you would I don't think I've ever disliked a comment on all of YouTube. Ever. On all of YouTube. This dude dislikes every other comment on the entire video.
Okay, move on.
That allow you to define a particle. The functions below this directly reference different aspects of this particle effect. These cannot be modified, but they can be wrapped, but this wouldn't be efficient. Having them exposed as normal allows you to modify existing particles dynamically, meaning in runtime, while the effect is running. Changing this just creates layers of obfuscation without improving usability or performance. Alarms are internal to individual objects and only reference that same object that they're inside of. When you see alarm 0, it's hitting the alarm 0 on the left side of the object there. We cannot rename these as they are tied. I try to put tied to the object they are placed in. Cool typo. Setting an alarm 0 causes that alarm to stop. Think of this as a timing or delay function. Data types are not defined in GameMaker. You cannot define a Boolean. You can use 0, 1 or true, false at will.
I wonder why he wrote this off screen, and then to respond, he just read the comment that he sent. I wonder if someone else wrote this for him.
Doesn't do anything. None of this matters in this language. The array of the save file is to create a workable structure for reverse engineering engineers trying to solve the ARG behind the game. It also saves this out in the exact same order in the save file. You can read about the ARG here.
That doesn't answer basically a single thing that he actually said in his video, by the way. It's just
Though numerical values hard-coded in a file are not really dynamic, unless they were being activated, as far as I remember. They're not being defined. You're not saying 413 is equal to something, 415 is equal to something. Then sure, maybe you're creating it from that point. Let me take a look again. Equal to 0. So you're kind of defaulting everything. But then why wouldn't you make a loop that goes through everything and set it to 0? This everything is 0 at this point. Why wouldn't you make a loop? I don't understand. I don't understand. Maybe it is a game maker thing, but if that's the case, I'm never using game maker because it sounds retarded.
Yeah. Which,
I'll use
you would
Godot.
expect
Godot
code
seems
better
fine
from
to me.
someone named Coding Jesus.
well, I would expect someone named Pirate Software to want to actually own the product that you purchase.
But I've got the ego, right?
Correct. I'm glad
Jeez.
you're that unself-aware. Thank you.
Very cool. Is he a web dev or something? I have no idea, but he clearly doesn't know this language. You can review language.
How can you possibly say you have no idea when he literally pulled out 400 books in the very beginning of the video? Unless
The
you
C++,
literally watched the
not a
video, or
web
you're
dev.
just trying to paint him in a bad light.
Any concepts are transferable. Concepts can be transferable, but specifics are not, and that's the problem. Person called out a bunch of specifics as they would in another language that are not correct in this language.
Bro, he made fun of your comments on every single...
Let me correct that. Concepts like if statements, variables, functions, objects, classes, which are essentially the same, they're universal. I actually have a whole basis of teaching programming based on that. It's the first 15% of any language. You learn those pieces. You essentially have an access to learning JavaScript, C++, Java, whatever. And then you can expand with those same concepts to anything else. It's just how all logic works in the programming world. The only thing that's not different are the external APIs, libraries, the code available to you based on the language. For Python, you've got networking. We did sockets earlier today. For JavaScript, you've got 3JS, which we imported from an online repository. You just have extra, it's the 85%. It's based on whether you want to do, game dev or web development or server management development. You want to do full stack basically, data analysis, whatever it is, machine learning. There's certain sets of libraries of code that you cater to based on that profession. So the 85%, you're never going to reach 100 on. You're never going to really learn all the things you ever could about one language. So you focus on the things you want to do. And that's why a lot of game devs have a set of teams. You have your backend team, your designer team, your networking team if you want to make it multiplayer and make it secure. You're not going to let your backend logic team handle the networking and the security features because that's a lot of extra, details that they need to know, not only encryption, but how to basically create the logical backend API of a system. So you want specialized people in specific places so you can optimize your game and not end up like Grand Theft Auto where your freaking servers get hacked every other fucking year or month. I don't know. I lost count. So once you learn the first 15%, which are the general concepts of programming, you basically learn those in high school, college. College will be a little bit late. I prefer most students learn it in high school, if not middle school. I taught a kid in India who was 10 years old, and we did some Roblox, and he learned functions, variables, and all the basics, and then he came back with learning like two other languages. Kid was a genius. So it's possible. You put the time in, you get that passion in, you can learn all those languages, even if you're 10 years old, which that was a very interesting exception in my life that I've observed. But, I've taught 12, 13, 14. I haven't taught one kid that really wanted to do Roblox, but he could not stand still and he had some heavy ADHD and remote education just did not work for him. He needed somebody there next to him holding his hand. So I guess it's not for everyone. But again, you learn the first 15%. You understand how variables are used, why we use variables, why we use loops, what are all the different ways we can use and apply loops, not just by creating, a list of things or going through a huge set of storyline items with a single variable and set everything equal to zero, but also creating 2D arrays if you're creating a snake game. All those kind of features are just, yeah, I know how to use a for loop, but you want to know how you can adjust it to using a nested for loop for whatever reasons you need it, and all the extra details. But like the first 15, you get that down, then you can transfer over from Python to JavaScript to Lua to PHP to C++ to C to C Sharp to Java to whatever language you really want. I've used random scripting languages that I never thought I would, like AutoHotkey. AutoHotkey is a pretty cool little scripting language for adjusting windows and basically creating like transparency on your windows that you couldn't do before. And you just had to know a little bit about the language, but it still functions similarly. The syntax is a little different. But the 85% is where you go into a subject, specifically networking, gaming, etc. So his definition here wasn't very nice or
Him in a
logical.
bad light.
The concepts are transferable. Concepts can be transferable, but specifics are
Maybe if by specifics he means game developer specifics versus networking specifics versus PHP web development specifics. You could just call it APIs, libraries, frameworks. There's a lot of different definitions for those, but specifics of what though? Like he's not being very specific, if I can really say that.
and that's the problem. A
I
person
don't
calls out
know.
a bunch of specifics as they would in another language that are not correct in this language.
Functions, definitions. Maybe because there's an specific file that handles these things that he's talking about because GameMaker works a specific way. Maybe, sure, but call that a framework because it's a framework. I'm really trying to understand his word of specific without it being actually specific to a definition of programming lingo. He's just saying specifics because maybe he doesn't know what it's called.
Bro, he made fun of your comments on every single line of code. Like, what are you talking about? This is a terrible response.
So
Yeah, it
try
wasn't that great.
code review correctly in a language you don't know. To be fair, you haven't seen the array, but it was the one solution you thought of off the top of your head. I want to slap you.
He's so frustrated.
How do you fix something you haven't seen before?
Oh my god, look
Literally
at
part
this.
of the problem. Hot damn, dude. That's even funnier. You can see the comments. Some people can't see it. Some people can see it. It's not going to be up at the top. You're going to have to search for it because it only has 16 likes. And I can't give you a direct link to it. So you could shadow ban people. Yeah. When you ban somebody
No,
on YouTube,
stop! He's not shadow banning you in the comments. Oh my god, you are pathetic, my brother. You have got to be kidding me.
there's like weird sneaky bullshit. It's called hiding them from the channel, which we don't really know what that does.
We know exactly what that does. Hiding someone from the channel means people can't see the comment. Don't you lie like this, bro.
We
Oh
don't
my
really know what
God.
it's
You
done.
think he hid you from the channel? You got downvoted.
So it would be
Probably.
surprised. Sort by newest, and it's around 5 hours ago. Okay. Either way,
Bro.
video's dumb. Dude probably should have reached out instead of talking shit.
Should have reached out. You don't respond to anyone. You block anyone that criticizes you. Should have reached out. He criticized your code. Why should he reach out? This is such a bad faith argument, by the way. And everyone does this. It's like, why would he criticize me without reaching out? Motherfucker, first of all, no one needs to reach out to you, okay? This isn't sexual assault allegations, all right? He's saying that you're a bad coder.
Oh,
because he
geez,
saw the code
Epstein.
with his own eyes.
The
And that's
files.
the way to
Release
fucking
the
prove it. Do
files.
not trust your eyes. You should reach out. Incredibly bad faith. Only people use this argument all the time, by the way, on YouTube. Sometimes it's legitimate. Sometimes it is so manipulative.
Or, I don't know, read the public docs for Game Maker?
So, in case you were curious, I asked if GameMaker language is the same syntax as C++, and the answer was overwhelmingly yes. Overwhelmingly yes.
Again, syntax is interchangeable. Even JavaScript has a very close syntax to C, C++, and Java. They have the brackets form. You don't even have to use tabs, but I recommend it. So like, yeah, the syntax very similar. You'll find some adjustments. JavaScript doesn't care if you use semicolons. I still recommend it, but you can turn on this little strict extra feature that actually supports and makes you use strict God, what was it called? I remember this was on one of those employee tests. It forces you to use semicolons or else it screams error. But normally JavaScript fills in everything for you. What was this? So maybe he wrote a loop to generate the hundreds of lines of array assignments in a separate script. Maybe, maybe that was like the definition space because it does have equals to, so he's setting everything there. Or maybe that's just like the reset space. Maybe that's his personal little dictionary of all the scripts he had or all the values in that array, and then he had little notes on the side. But that's just so much, man. That's just so much. I guess you have to have that somewhere, either on the physical medium or something. And maybe he uses that variable somewhere else, and it makes more sense that he would use loops and a control structure. You pass the first, you go from the pool, then you go to the floor or whatever. But I still like, I feel like you can still optimize that to have a two-dimensional array. Like pool, what happens at the pool, all the events and the people. Store, what happens at the store, all the events and people. There's a way you can potentially, maybe I'm not understanding something. Maybe I'm not understanding something in the way Game Maker specifically handles linear storylines. Maybe. But there's better ways in my observation of basically creating the text games, the text adventure games, where you basically have a two-dimensional array. Uh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But I'm just really looking at what he has shown, and it's basically just a bunch of numbers. And it's not just that, it's all the effects and the sprites from earlier. Those were also very much just numbers that it just wasn't definitive or anything. And they didn't have dynamic usage at all. So I don't know, man.
It's so the similarities are GML and C++ share the same C style syntax for basic constructs like loops, conditionals, functions, operators, making GML somewhat familiar to C++. The
Yeah.
differences are GML is more dynamically typed. It's
Which
simpler.
means which means you don't have to set an integer or a double or a float or a boolean. Like you said, you just basically set it equal to whatever you want and automatically does it. Understandable. Dynamically typed, it's good. But I mean, even though, still, why not just use true and false? That was the argument, right? It's dynamically typed, so it doesn't necessarily, adjust the way you use one and zero versus true and false. But still, when you do numbers like one and zero, the language itself does set a numerical association to that variable. So now you have the ability to accidentally or by happenstance through maybe bad programming or someone else modifying your code, set that supposed 0, 1 true false situation to 2 or -1 because you've just basically given it a number and the association to integer exists because dynamically typed languages will turn that variable into whatever you give it. If you give it a boolean, true or false, it's going to be only a boolean. Then you try to store a 1 in it, it's going to say mistype. It's not the same type as the original. But, if you're using 1 or 0, well, that's just your reference to how you feel truth and false works, which is fine, no problem with that, but that still means it's an integer, and you can essentially somewhere down the line put a 2 or a 0 or 2 or a -1 or some other value, or maybe you're doing math accidentally, whatever. There could be some issues. Or in the loop, you're trying to set it from 1 to 0, you're trying to subtract by 1, maybe you accidentally make the loop twice, and now it's a -1. That could cause some issues. This is kind of where security comes into play. Programmers don't understand that when a hacker tries to look at a code, they're looking for these kind of exploits. Memory misallocations, not using variables in their most optimized way, just leaving a little bit of sliver of space where they can inject something into that space. Just the ability for me to use 2 instead of 1 or 0. That could potentially give access to certain parts of memory. That's what they do. They use people's biases, and a lot of developers have their own individual issues. It's a very psychological format. If you go through any GitHub and you find all the issues, you get an AI, let's say, to learn all the GitHub issues about what's the most common programming error, and you feed that AI those issues, well, by chance, when you exploit a program, it's going to be one of those issues. Off by one. Error. Not filtering your types. Not filtering certain types of language inputs so you can prevent injection. A lot of things like that. So, you can do whatever you want. You can use a 1 and a 0 if you want. But like I'm saying, you can use 2 also and -1 or a decimal, 0.0001. What is that going to do? What if you do an overflow, 0.0000000001? who knows what's going to happen when you overflow that space in that specific location. So it's better to have an error mismatch versus letting a number go into a place and potentially cause some sort of overflow error, and then you can be on your way and
Game maker language
make a keygen.
which is simpler, okay? The main criticism against Pirate Software was that his code was verbose and yucky and sloppy. All right, the
It's
game
simpler,
maker
yeah.
language is supposed to be simpler, okay? Tailored for game studios, blah blah blah. Yeah. Anyway, so your argument is bullshit,
Wild, dude. Was it the dude? Yeah. Like I said, you're gonna see a whole lot of people on YouTube trying to pick at me like piranhas to get their 15 minutes of fame.
bro. What do you mean they're 15 minutes of fame? Half these people are more famous than you are. All right, listen, I'm not trying to
And as far as I'm seeing, his opinions are kind of killing his audience too. He's losing people. And it really does go back to like just the fact that you can't realize or accept the fact that corporations are literally making us pay. I'm almost scared to buy Steam games if I wasn't trustworthy or trusting of Valve. And the reason I trust Valve is because I hate Windows. And I hate Windows, but I see SteamOS. And I see SteamOS coming in with that Linux alternative. And they're doing a good ass job. I actually installed Linux Mint on my desktop, my big boy here, and it works phenomenal. It works phenomenal. It installs Steam. I can play games. This is a huge difference from 10, 15 years ago when I had to fuck around with an Acer Aspire Gem something and nothing worked. Huge difference. And it all happened because Steam decided to go into the Steam Deck world. And before they could do that, they had to make some sort of intricate Windows has had the dominant aspect of operating systems because they basically make everything defaulted to it, just like they tried with Netscape and Internet Explorer. They put that system in there by default, and then you have to basically work with what you have, unless you're technical and you go download Netscape or Firefox or Opera or Brave, whatever pops up. Also, public announcement. Firefox has gone back on its privacy stuff, so I wouldn't recommend going with Firefox. I'd probably use Brave or Libre, Libre browser. What is that called? Uh, Libre. This is something new that yeah, Libre Wolf, Libre Wolf. It's basically a Firefox fork before they basically started to, well, sell your private data. So just a small little public announcements. I'm a big anti-corporate person. I hate how they're basically abusing just the fact that we're buying games, we're saying purchase, but then they can basically discontinue the server and the purchase we made is now gone forever. That makes no sense to me. How can you, why can't we go back to CDs? Why can't we, why can't we sell games on USB flash cards? You know, the DS is still doing that. The little cartridges, they're basically like super powerful SD cards, and but they're still little cartridges. You can get freaking Cyberpunk on a little cartridge and play it on your freaking DS2 or no, Nintendo Switch. That's what I was talking about. Nintendo Switch. So why can't we go back to that? Why can't we own the games that we're buying? And that's probably why. Because if you own something for a long time, you're going to go back to it in the future. And everyone, every corporation is fighting for your time. They're trying to pay as much money so they can put you on their loop to go in, do your dailies on Rivals, on Apex, on League of Legends, on Rise of Kingdoms, on whatever game that you have that you're basically grinding on a daily basis, and you spend that time on that game so they can advertise on you. That's why. If we had the ability to go back in time and play games we used to play in the past, we'd do it all the time. I've downloaded Game Boy emulators on my phone, and I just play myself me some old Sims, Pokemon, Zeldas, Mario's, Metroid, whatever, man. I've stopped downloading apps on the phone because I can get emulators and basically play all the classics that I was dreaming of a day where I can have all the games I wanted as a kid. I was just a poor kid with my mom and she couldn't afford to get a lot of stuff. But now living in this world, we can buy and use every single old game for like super cheap compared to like the 80 buck price tag that we're basically doing on Steam games. And then we don't even know if we're gonna own that game in 4 or 5 years when the server goes down. Count me out. Like I'm kind of like done with that whole renting gaming game system thing. So anyway,
likes you or anything. But I got double your views this month. So did people like Tectone, right? Asmongold, bro, he's like 10 times your size.
Yep. You make a link to it. You have to click on the little 6 hours edited. So that doesn't seem to do it. Oh, do I have to right click on this and then copy link address and then do that? Is that what does this? Ah, it does highlighted comment. There we go. Boop. There's my comment on it.
I love how we can't actually make any points that aren't on the pre-written comment that he posted before the stream. Like, do we all not realize that this is very hilarious?
Enjoy. And I also have a whole argument with a whole bunch of people in the replies in there so they can see what's going on with it. I talked them through the entire thing.
It's all about
why
the alarms,
I did that
bro.
all in an array, because that is not normal practice to do that, and it's specifically so that you guys can reverse engineer the game and solve the ARG. Sometimes doing bad practice has meaning, which is why I did it in that case.
Oh my fucking god, there's no fucking way. He did bad practice on purpose because he wants you to solve
So he understands
the
that it's
ARG
bad
of the
practice,
game. ARG
but it
is
has
augmented
meaning.
reality games where it basically it breaks the fourth wall so that you could like I don't know, like in Five Nights at Freddy's they release like comic books or whatever to like reference the game or stuff like that. So it's all part of his plan.
What are you doing,
He
Cat?
makes it bad on purpose to give clues to the ARG so that people could figure out his game. You've got to be fucking kidding me, bro. His bad practice has meaning, bro. This guy is such a fraud. He's such a fraud. What are we doing here?
So that you guys could do those.
So then you know what? You should have said from the very beginning, you're right, there is bad practice. I did it on purpose. I'm a bad coder. He spends 10 minutes defending and saying, you don't understand anything. The practices are all good. And then at the end, he's like, yeah, but any bad practices were done on purpose? Oh, my lord. You've got to be kidding me.
That is odd.
And I've been saying that for years. The ARG solving community around the game knows this.
Oh, my
That's
God.
why it's
He's kind of brushing it off now like it's nothing. I mean, think about the way that we maintain info. The more something is repeated, the more we retain it. So he's been repeating everything is the way it's supposed to be. This is how it's done. This is how Game Maker does it. Da 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 da. But then he only, at the end, says really quickly, it's bad practice, but it has purpose. So, is it the way Game Maker works? Or are you finally admitting that it's bad practice and you're just throwing it in there so in the future you can say, oh, I admitted it, it was bad practice. But then you spent like a whole hour defending your own code. That's actually very interesting because a lot of people will go through an exhaustive list of excuses and then this is psychological and this is kind of, um, God, what's that word? The one word for psychotic. Someone that tries to make you feel like you're like the aggressor and they play the victim, but basically they're the ones that have been trying to excuse their code and then kind of put in, oh yeah, it was bad practice, but don't worry about it, it has purpose, right? That's a weird little slip there at the end. So he can basically say, oh, I admitted it last time, that's what I did, and I told you guys it was bad practice. Don't do it, learn from it. But like, why defend it so hard right now, though?
so.
Maybe he likes the drama and it brings him attention. Maybe. Maybe he needs to make up for all the losses he's making when he's trying to fight the consumer right to own your game even after the server goes down. I still don't understand how he did that mental gymnastic to excuse stop killing games and make it seem like such a culprit when it literally just says corporations need to have a backup plan. If you expect your game is running on a server that costs money, and at some point you're just gonna end up at the end of your sales because you can't make everyone on Earth buy it, why not just make a backup plan, give us the server as a regular consumer, and then we'll continue playing it like DayZ. Super simple.
Then you agree that the criticism was valid. So the criticism was valid then. All right? He went from, I made no mistakes, you don't understand what you're saying, to, yes, it's bad, but it's a good thing that it's bad.
It's not a gotcha. It's just stupid. Yep. So anyway, enjoy.
Bro, he's so salty, it's crazy.
When in the world do you sleep? I haven't slept since 9 a.m. yesterday. I've been working on Heartbound all day.
The game that he's been released, that's supposed to have been released in 2020. He works very hard, guys.
Oh, really?
Look at what he's
I don't know
right
anything
now.
about this.
I don't even know what this is. Yeah, alright, good stuff, bro. This is crazy.
All right, anyway, like and subscribe, guys. I'm done with this. I've been out dramaed. I need to go to sleep. Like and subscribe if you want to learn more coding that's proper and not based on, I guess, this game Hardbound that's been supposed to have been released for 5 years now and still hasn't. Although there's a lot of games that I've been hearing about that are supposed to release, but they haven't. They've been in development since 2018. Hey, didn't Microsoft just kill off a couple of games recently? that were basically in development since 2018, there's a lot of interesting time wasters out there, and I feel like this is one of those. Anyway, thanks for joining in. I hope you enjoyed my little rant and watching this concept. Hope you learned something from all of this. That's really the key here is hope you learned the details behind, how he coded stuff, how he's excusing himself for having bad practices with a purpose, but actually having bad code in the overall scheme of things. And his language for game maker is the same, or if not super close to C++. So him attacking Code Jesus was kind of irrational when there was a comparison there. But anyway, like and subscribe if you want to learn more. I'll be around. I'm trying to stream every day, coding, vibe coding as well with AI, so you can see, and a bunch of technical stuff. So appreciate you guys coming, and yeah, see you next time. Peace.